Give it just a moment to allow everyone to come in from the waiting room. As a reminder, please mute yourselves. Good afternoon. This is an informational hearing for all South Boston licensees before the Licensing Board for the City of Boston. Today is Friday, February 26th. Today's hearing is being conducted pursuant to certain temporary amendments to the open meeting law. That is what allows us to meet virtually. This hearing will be recorded and will be posted to the City of Boston's website. Please utilize the chat function to place the name and your name, the name of your restaurant, and the address of your restaurant. To be clear, today's hearing is the same informational hearing the board and the Boston Police Department have with South Boston licensees in anticipation of every St. Patrick's Day. This is absolutely not a disciplinary hearing. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to attend and to be part of what we anticipate is a productive discussion. While there is no parade this year, we do anticipate that there will again be an influx of patrons into South Boston. As St. Patrick's Day is on a Wednesday, March 17th this year, we anticipate that there will be a significant influx that will begin Friday, March 11th, and will run through Sunday, March 21st. Again, today's hearing is a conversation with our licensees to discuss best practices for the St. Patrick's Day holiday. I will now introduce Chairwoman Kathleen Joyce.
Thank you, Leslie. My name is
Kathleen, you are muted.
Thank you. My name is Kathleen Joyce. I'm Chair of the Licensing Board. We're also joined today by City Councilor Michael Flaherty and City Councilor Ed Flynn, Chief of Health and Human Services Marty Martinez, Captain Joseph Boyle from District 6, Lieutenant Troy, Sergeant Detective Gallagher, and Detective Hernandez from the Licensed Premise Unit. We're also joined by Commissioner Liam Curran, Commissioner Kiana Saxon from the Licensing Board, Commissioner Dion Irish, Chief of Staff Chris English from Inspectional Services, and Director of ONS, Eddie McGuire. Again, thank you all for joining us today. I want to emphasize this is not a disciplinary hearing. This is a conversation with our licensees that we have every year. And we work closely with all of you since March 2020. So we thank you for your cooperation and collaboration over the last now almost 12 months. I want to emphasize that we are in this together. And we're here today to talk about the new regulations that go into effect on Monday and some issues that you may be thinking about as operators as you anticipate larger crowds in the reopening that starts on Monday. As Leslie mentioned, we also know a big piece of your operations is the public cooperation. So we hope we can help get that message out to your patrons. As you remember last year, South Boston licensees voluntarily closed on St. Patrick's Day when it became clear that the number of patrons was presenting a public health challenge. This was before we had any idea of the impact that the pandemic would have on our restaurants. The board and the city appreciated your cooperation that weekend and your continued cooperation throughout the last year. We know the vast majority of our licensees are doing everything possible to comply with the changing regulations. Before we get into the overview of the state guidelines and the city's regulations, I want to introduce Chief of Health and Human Services, Marty Martinez, to give us an overview.
Hello.
Chief.
Thanks, Kathleen. Appreciate it. And just thank you, everyone, for being on the Zoom today. And just let me just thank everyone for what you've all had to continue to do over a long duration of time. I appreciate it. The city appreciates it. The public health work that we've had to do has been made stronger by the work that all of business owners are trying to do. So I do appreciate that and just want to extend that to everyone. You know, as you see and we see across our sort of our public health measures, where things are moving in the right direction. We're seeing improvement in terms of, you know, where we are and positivity in the community and less cases, less folks being severely impacted. And so we are definitely seeing things moving in the direction that we all want to see, as well as widespread, you know, continued, hopefully, access to the vaccine as it becomes more available. And so as we do that, it's really important that we try to reopen in a methodical, cautious way so that we don't have to take steps backwards. It's been the goal from the city all along on the public health side that as we reopen, we want to be cautious so that we can reopen and stay open. What we don't want to have to do is reopen too quickly, reopen without the right measures in place, then will force us to go back and to go back in a place that I know is challenging for all of you. So it's important to us that we do that in a slow, intentional way. Having said that, we know that many of you have put a lot of things in place to try to protect your patrons and consumers, and we appreciate that. But we do also know that we've seen small clusters of cases through some of our restaurants and some of our facilities across the city, as well as in South Boston. And so we want to do everything we can to not only protect patrons, but protect workers, and make sure that folks can have a good experience, but that we're not putting more people at risk for COVID. And so with the regulations, the restrictions that the state's changing effective Monday, additional restrictions that will go into place on the 22nd that I know are going to be covered here. We want to do everything we can to work with you, to support you in that, but not to forget the fact that COVID is still across the community. We had 220 plus cases just yesterday. We're continuing to see COVID, and we want to do everything we can to keep people safe while working with you on the measures that we know you all are working hard to make possible. So I want to just say thank you for the work you're going to do and continue to do. I'm here to support any additional information that might be needed, but wanted to make sure you knew that we're trying to partner with you as we do this phased reopening in an intentional, methodical way, so we don't go back on any of the progress that we've already had. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Kathleen or Leslie, to walk us through the next steps.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Councillor Flaherty or Councillor Flynn, would you like to say a few words before we get into some of the guidelines?
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Just wanted to add, obviously, that as you had mentioned, we're in this together. I want to make sure that all the owners, obviously continue to work with the community. At the end of the day, that's our main concern, is making sure that the community stays safe. 99.9% of the owners, they do an awesome job. So, and it's less about them and more about the patrons, and just making sure that patrons are doing what they're being asked to do by the professional staff there. So I think to date, restaurants and the bars in the community have done a great job throughout COVID. And this is an opportunity for us to put our best foot forward again. So, so I appreciate the meeting. This is an annual event. We're on this every year as we head towards the St. Patrick's Day Parade festivities. It's arguably a whole month of events that we've always had in South Boston, curtailed obviously by COVID-19. So as we continue to move forward and get out of the pandemic, just asking that the owners continue to do the great things that they do. They've always done. They've been very responsive and very responsible to the community. So they're great neighbors. We know them all. We work closely with them. And at the end of the day, just making sure that we adhere to a quality of life for the community, and that the patrons act and socialize responsibly. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Flynn, would you like to add a few words?
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. I'll be very brief. Just want to say thank you to you, Kathleen, and your team, to Captain Boyle and his team, but also especially the restaurant and bar owners during this difficult year. They really worked closely with the city and did the best they could. And I think we're in a better place right now because of the discipline of the restaurants and working closely with the city. I'd also like to add that these restaurants are owners and their employees are also our neighbors. They live here. They contribute to the neighborhood as well, whether it's on Broadway or on L Street. They're there for our neighbors, especially during difficult times. So just want to say thank you to the restaurant owners, the bar owners, and the city officials that are here for working closely together during this difficult year. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you. And before we continue, I just want to recognize Amanda Curley is here from Councillor Frank Baker's office. Captain Boyle, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for the cooperation over the last year. It's been a very difficult year for all of us, and you overwhelmingly cooperated with the police. We'll have additional coverage out the weekend before, on St. Patrick's Day, and the weekend after. I do expect to see a lot of people coming in, so I think lines will be an issue. So just do the best you can with the lines out front. We'll be there to assist you in the issues you have that may arise. Last year the crowd showed up early, and before we had to shut everything down. So we expect that again. But we'll be inspecting inside the bars. We'll be out on the street walking around to make sure everything's safe and orderly. But please look at us as a resource. You know, we don't have to be looked at as the bad guys. We're here to help you and assist you. So we're at District 6, so don't hesitate to reach out. And again, thank you for your cooperation over this last year, which has been very difficult for you. We all understand that.
Thanks, Captain. And I'd like to introduce Dan Prendergast, who's the Commissioner of ISD Health. Dan, I know I saw you on here.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen. So ISD Health is also going to have a presence during the St. Patrick's Day period. We will have our inspectors out enforcing regulatory requirements and, COVID-19 safety protocol that, we've been doing throughout this past year. And, I also want to thank the restaurants and bars for, working as hard as they can to ensure, COVID-19 protocols and safety measures have been put in place and enforced as well. ISD Health will have a presence with inspectors as well during this time. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks, Dan. So as you heard yesterday, starting March 1st, which is Monday, the new regulations take effect. And I just wanted to go over those together. We are still fine tuning them ourselves and asking for additional clarity from the state. So bear with us as we answer specific questions that have been emailed to us in the last 24 hours. But in general, the capacity caps have been removed, but you must still have your tables and chairs 6 feet apart and abide by all other social distancing requirements. So to pause there to get clarity on that. In high traffic areas, they have to be 6 feet apart. And for instance, we know that some of the licensees, especially in this neighborhood, have installed 6 feet barriers to allow for seating closer together. That is still permitted. So again, social distancing is now the lens through which we are looking at enforcement of capacity. It's not a number. So tables and chairs should be 6 feet apart. However, you can have them closer together if you have, if you look at the state guidelines, if you have barriers that are 6 feet tall and that are porous or non-permeable, but all of this stuff will be in our, you can find it on the state website. Parties still have to be 6 people per table, and there is the 90-minute limit that we talked about earlier. And I know this is an issue every single year. It was an issue this summer when the weather was nice in all parts of the city, not just South Boston, but you cannot have a line outside beginning March 11th through March 21st, especially. I don't know if it's beginning then, you shouldn't have a line anyways, but so you're responsible for ensuring that there's no line outside your licensed premise and dispersing that line that forms on your property, that forms promptly. You might want to consider extra staff. You might want to consider a reservation system, a text notification system. We're letting you know now, we do not want to see lines in South Boston from March 11th to March 21st. No live entertainment. You can have TVs and backgrounds as we just discussed. That also means no DJs and no trivia right now or instrumental music. This will not be changing any time before March 22nd. We'll be reevaluating as March 22nd approaches, and we'll be looking at the data as Chief Martinez explained. And again, to be sitting at a table, you have to have food with your beverage. And again, I want to go over the fact that we're having inspections and that we've had these Monday morning hearings. We are coming down very strongly on enforcement. And we will be looking at this particular neighborhood closely just because it's St. Patrick's Day. But I want to assure you, we're not looking for violations. My team is not out there looking to write people up to come in on Monday morning. We're looking to help you. So the things that we look at when we decide whether or not someone's coming in for a hearing is whether or not your behavior or your actions were reasonable, or whether or not something that happened was foreseeable. It would be foreseeable if someone was allowed to stay for like three 90-minute sessions at a time and to drink without food, that there might be a bar fight. So that would be foreseeable. It's not reasonable to not call the police for assistance when you see a line outside and you don't have enough staff to control it. So you want to keep those two things in mind. You will not be penalized because you call the police, but if you do not call the police and something happens, that is something we do take into consideration. So those are the basic parameters of the new guidelines that were announced yesterday and that take effect on Monday. But we can talk about specific questions. I'd love to hear from you, the operators, about where you need clarity and how we can be helpful to you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And as the Chairwoman and as the Captain mentioned, you should look at the licensed premise unit, the district and the board as resources. To the Chairwoman's point, whenever you call the police, if a licensed premise inspection notice is issued, the Chairwoman and the board staff review every single one of those to determine if the licensee cooperated, and as Chairwoman Joyce said, if the incident was foreseeable. Many of these are filed without a hearing, and there's no consequence to the licensee whatsoever. So we want to emphasize that calling the police because you need assistance is absolutely not something that you're going to be penalized for. So again, we appreciate everyone in attendance, and we would now like to open it up to questions or comments. I see that Gerald Pomeroy has your hand raised. And if you would like to speak, if you could please just put your name in the chat, that would be helpful.
My name Bao Chuyên from Ô Con Đi Quái.
Go ahead.
The time from St. Patrick's Day, the regular hour open like 12 to 4 or just like.
You can be open for your regular, both package stores and
The package store, yeah.
You can be open for your licensed hours, so you can remain open for the hours for which you are licensed.
It's not like before like 12 to 4 close, no, but on a regular hour. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any questions, comments? Sheila, were you looking to ask a question? I see your name in the chat.
Correct. I was wondering, are we allowed to serve at the bar?
Yes, you can utilize your bar seating with the required social distancing and capacity restrictions. So you can, again, it's alcohol with food only. Patrons can be seated at the bar. They must be 6 feet away from the active bar service area. That is where the drinks are being made, the fruit is being cut, and where your bartender would be standing if they're not actively serving a patron. You can also have a partition installed that is non-porous in order to seat patrons in front of the bar area. No patrons can be standing. And again, food must be served with alcohol.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, suggestions? And Rebecca Fu on our team just put into the chat the bar seating information from the state's guidelines. So Bill Farley just put in the chat, what are the rules for running buyouts and events in a restaurant? Are patrons allowed to stand and walk around, or is it strictly seated?
Chief.
We're going to defer to Chief Martinez.
Yeah, so the question is again, what are the rules for running buyouts and events in a restaurant? Are patrons allowed to stand and walk around, or is it strictly seated? So patrons are not allowed to stand and walk around, right? People only need to be there seated. The rules for running buyouts or events in a restaurant is that, again, I think licensing can play this. There are not to be special events. There are not event spaces. Indoor event spaces are not open in the city of Boston until the 22nd. So the read on the public health side was that those would not be eligible. What is eligible is what you're currently licensed to be able to do. So Kathleen or Leslie, if you have other thoughts, but that would be our read.
Yeah, there is, you could contact us, but some examples we've received are, can you have trivia? And right now on March 1st in the city of Boston, you could only have trivia if you close the restaurant and you could only have 10 people.
And that is for, at this time, for any special event. So if you're looking to close your restaurant for a birthday party, you have to close the entire restaurant, and that party cannot exceed 10 people inside. And on the point of entertainment, that is something where the city at this stage is separate, is different from what the state is allowing. There are other parts of the state on a case-by-case basis, depending on the municipality, will allow live entertainment in restaurants. Boston is not allowing any live entertainment until at least March 22nd.
And we realized that that was not mentioned in the governor's press conference yesterday, and there's a lot of social media activity advertising live entertainment starting on Monday. We're doing our best to address it and contact those people and to get our message out that there is no live entertainment allowed in the city of Boston on March 1st. We did get a question just before we started this meeting about what happens if people want to step outside to smoke, and what are you supposed to do, and if people start to gather when they're smoking. We can't possibly come up with rules and regulations for every single scenario. So I'm just asking, I think it might be helpful to everyone to have extra staff on that, you know, during your busy time. If you run into that problem on a regular day, you're going to probably run into it more during the week of St. Patrick's Day. I don't have an answer to that, but we don't want to see crowds outside, with whether they're waiting to get in, people talking, or people outside for a cigarette. So you'll have to use your best judgment about how to disperse those lines.
And we just got a question from Bill Farley. Does the 10 capacity inside change on the 22nd? I would defer to the chief, but I think that's going to depend on incoming public health metrics.
Yeah, Leslie. So right now, the plan is that would change on the 22nd, according to the state. But the city is going to be monitoring the metrics over the next 3 weeks to determine whether or not we will align with that. But that is the plan on the state side.
Thank you, Chief. I see that Gerald still has his hand up, but might have walked away. So is there anyone else who has I'm sorry, Gerald appears to be back. Gerald, did you have a question? Oh, you are muted. Okay, I don't think Gerald has a question. Is there anyone else who has a question or a comment? Susan? You want to, Susan from the sport, there you go.
Hi, how are you? Do we know the parade route yet? Because I'm in Andrew Square, of course, and I was curious if it starts there, ends there, what's going on?
There is no parade.
Oh, there is no parade.
There are no parades.
I thought there was going to be a parade. I'm sorry, we've been closed for a couple of weeks. It's been really, no business down there. So I haven't been. But okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad I asked. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so we won't take up any more of your time. We really greatly appreciate everyone coming on this call. Again, we look forward to when we can actually do this in person leading up to St. Patrick's Day. And I'll ask the chairwoman if she wants to make any closing remarks.
Hi, Leslie. I don't know if Chief Martinez had his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Chief.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to add I heard Councilor Flynn and Councilor Flaherty, and obviously, Chairman Joyce. I just again want to add the thank you for all the work that all the business owners are doing and managers. I can't appreciate it enough. I mean, we know that you all are trying to make it work and trying to figure out how to make it all possible. And from our end on public health and Captain Boyle's team and BPD, we want to make sure that you can do what you're able to do. But I just want to thank you for that. We have had to come talk to some restaurants and get help around, contact tracing and other things. And folks have been, for the most part, very helpful because I know you want to keep your workers safe and your employees safe as well. So I just want to say thank you and continue to work with us so we can all see the progress that we want to make and be back into some better days. So I just wanted to add to that voice. So just thank you all for that. I appreciate it.
I do have one more comment. We got this question this week. I forget what neighborhood it was from, but from a package store operator, are they allowed to ask someone to remove their mask to make a proper identification? I'm going to say yes. You can ask someone to remove their mask to ID them to see if they're under 21 or not. I had not had that question before, but I think it came from ISD. Is that right, Leslie?
I believe so, ISD, and I can see Dan Prendergast nodding. It came from ISD. So that was a first, but I think that makes sense. We would also like to ask if the Lieutenant Detective Troy, Sergeant Gallagher, or Detective Hernandez from our licensed premise unit, who I think everyone on this call is very familiar with, if any of our team want to say a couple words.
But just briefly, that we'll have several teams, not on the weekend before and St. Patrick's Day itself and the following weekend. And, you know, we hope for and expect to continue cooperation and courtesy, and we've always got that in the past, and we really appreciate it. As the chairwoman and Captain Boyle says, the lines in particular are, there was a big problem last year. It was all over the media. It was a very big problem, and it was particularly poor optics, and it didn't reflect well on the bar owners in the community. So we'd hope that you'd assign some staff to regulate the line, to disperse the line if possible. If there's people spoken to ask them to move down the street or further away from the premises. And beyond that, you know, just simply the presence of our detectives and the captain's officers, you know, coming into your bar. It's again, it's not purely punitive. It's we're there as a resource, and we're there to help, and we're not there to you know, to hammer anybody. That's not our purpose at all. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody out there.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Sergeant, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I want to echo what the lieutenant said. Staffing is paramount. If you have a good staff up front, let your patrons know exactly when they come in what they have to do. Well, we shouldn't have many problems. I implore a lot of you guys to use an ID checker. This holiday usually brings a pretty big party crowd, and a younger crowd does come with that. There are a lot of IDs out there. If you need help with any of the IDs that day, myself and Detective Hernandez will have some scanners with us, and we can check IDs for you. But if you guys have them, it'll be a lot easier for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. And Detective Hernandez, did you want to add anything?
I'm good. I think they said everything we needed to put out there.
Leslie, I just want to echo what Sergeant Detective Gallagher said about the IDs. You know, our primary focus recently has been on the COVID guidelines, but we are looking to enforce the under 21 and the underage drinking. We've had several violation hearings, and we hear the same thing over and over, that someone came in for dinner and they weren't checked at the table. So I strongly recommend you check the IDs of people that sit down for dinner and then order drinks, because that is something that we're looking at very closely again, just because COVID's going on. That is not something we're taking lightly.
Thank you. And the same goes for obviously overservice of patrons, which is something that in past years we've seen a lot of on this holiday. So again, we want to thank everyone. As again, the licensed premise unit, the district, and the board are here as a resource. If you have any questions, please reach out. And again, please don't hesitate to call. No question is too silly. You know, we're trying to work through these regulations just like everybody else is. So please don't hesitate to reach out to the board. Thank you for everyone.
Thanks, Leslie. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.